Hello students, this video is just a quick introduction to using the Makecode website to program the Microbit microprocessor. Once you've loaded the Makecode site, you'll see something similar to this. The heading of course may have changed the image. You will not necessarily have these same available past programs here of course, and you will have a new project. You will also have tutorials which also could have changed since the time of this video, and if you scroll down you will continue to see more and more different tutorials and examples that you can have a look at. So going back to the top of the page, what you'll most likely be doing is either choosing new project to start something new, possibly clicking on a past project that you have done, and we'll talk more about these shortly, or possibly also importing a project from a file that you've saved onto a USB or somewhere else. For now, let's start with a new project. The first thing you should always do is name your project, and you're asked to do that straight away. A good idea, as I usually say to my students, is to use your last name, then your first name, and then the name of whatever project you're doing. And this will just help to keep files separated, especially when you possibly hand them in to your teacher. So if I was doing this one, I would be doing Tomic, Nathan, and I'm going to be doing a counter here. So I'll put the last part of the name as the project I'm doing. We also have some code options here. If we have a look, it basically lets us choose how we're going to be programming, what style we're going to use. By default, it uses blocks, JavaScript, and Python all together, which lets you swap around a little bit. Or you can specifically choose Python. And if you're in year 8 at North Keilor, this is what you should be using when you do this. But for now, we're just going to leave it as the default blocks, JavaScript, and Python, and press create. Okay, once it's loaded, the first thing I want you to notice is down the bottom here, there is the name that we chose when we first put it in. If you didn't name your file properly, or if you want to rename it, you can do so down in this space here. If we have a look around the screen, you'll see that we have a simulated microbit. So this is really useful because it means that we can actually do a lot of work without needing a real device. We have the blocks that we can choose for the different programming. So we're doing Blockly here. If we were using Python, there would be a different set of blocks here that we could refer to. Then we have our main workspace where we'll be dragging those blocks or where we'll be writing our Python code depending on what we're doing. We also have a big download button down the bottom here, which is where we will download the file to our computer. And later on, if we connect a real device, we'll also be able to use these dots here to pair our device or basically synchronize them together, and therefore download the program to the real microbit as well. We also have up the top here a little cog, which is where we can do some preferences. And the main thing we're going to want from here is this extension area. And we'll see at a later stage how we're going to need to load some different extensions, which basically just gives us different additional functionality that we can use in our projects. I'll be adding extensions for the McQueen robot, and we'll also be adding extensions for the NeoPixel lights, and you may eventually add some other extensions as well. You'll also see some basic settings like print and so forth as well. You can have a look at those, they're fairly straightforward. Finally, we have some standard controls down the bottom. We've got an undo and a redo, and we've also got a zoom in and out for the workspace area to give yourself more space to work as well. And that is a very basic tour around the Microbit Makecode site. Now, there's some very important things I want to touch on now. The first one is, or actually really they're both to do with downloading. So when we download, if it's not connected to an actual device, or if we use the save icon here next to the name, what we are doing is actually saving a hex file. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to click on the save icon, and my computer has downloaded a file to my downloads folder. It's called microbit, so they'll always say microbit, then a hyphen, and then the name that I have chosen. So this name over here, okay? And this is a hex file, so we can see that in the little pop-up there, a HEX file. Now, Hex File is not a text file. It's not something that can be opened with Word or PowerPoint or anything like that. It's a file that this will be able to put onto a microbit. So you should not try and open these files. Okay, so don't double click on them. Don't try and open them, because if you do, it'll just look like rubbish anyway. And you've also got a chance that you might corrupt the file and therefore make it unusable. But this hex file is the only way that you can actually save your work and keep it for a later stage. Because you may have not realized, but we did not log into this site. There is no username or password. So it doesn't remember you, and therefore it does not save your work. But hang on, some of you might be thinking, we saw some work at the start and you even mentioned this work. So let's go back and have a look at that. So I'm going to press home to go back to this main screen. And yes, here we have 4 previous pieces of work, including the one that I was just working on. And if I do click on it, it will take me back to that program. But here's the catch. Here's the thing you need to be really clear on. These are linked to this computer that I'm on right now. So if I go to this site on a different computer, these will not be there. They're stored basically in your browser's memory on your computer, and over time they will disappear. And as you add more and more in, they will disappear. So this is not a good or safe way of keeping your work. Yes, if you log into the same computer and it is there, then feel free to click on it and continue your work. But you should always, always, always be downloading a hex file, an actual copy that you can save, that you can put onto a USB, that you can hand into your teacher, that you can put on OneDrive or something like that, so that you have an actual copy of your work. Because eventually, as I said, these will disappear. And that's absolutely not going to be an excuse for not having your work. Okay? So yes, they're useful, but don't rely on them. Rely on always saving the work. When you have saved work, and let's say you've got your USB and you have to maybe go on a family computer because yours is being repaired or something, your school computer, you can go here to the import. You can then import from a file, and you can go and find that hex file. And if you choose and find that hex file that we saved earlier and upload it, then you will be back to having your work. And again, that is how you can make sure you have your files, and that's how you can make sure that you can move your files from computer to computer if you need to. Again, do not rely on these recent project tiles that appear here. Okay, that is the basics of what I'm going to show you in this particular video. I'm going to do another video that shows you a very basic program where we'll actually make the counter that we have sort of started setting up. So have a look at that video next.